Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome, one and all. You are probably someone with a media device, and if this sounds familiar, you need to do this today. You need to start. If you're somebody who, torrents movies or TV shows, and of course shows and movie stuff that you own, okay, not endorsing anything else here, but if you are someone like that and you go to websites and you download them and you go to RooTorrent or rTorrent or whatever software on your Windows platform is and all this stuff, you download the movies to a movies folder, you put all your movies in the downloads folder, you kind of have a movies library that you have a movies and TV library, but you're not really doing anything to it. You're just copying the same files that you download into that movies and TV library. Then you need to do this because you are missing out on an entire world, but also a community of people and developers and people who've done just an incredible amount of things to make movie watching enjoyable. And you might be thinking, well, I'm fine. I don't mind just downloading movies, going to the torrent sites, downloading what I want. I get into a pattern. Well, sure, I'm sure you got into a pattern, but that's a pattern you want to break because you want to really get into something that handles everything for you. And it's very incredibly intuitive. There's a UI, some of the cool things that you could do on top of being extremely organized is setting up servers for your friends and family, or setting up something that allows your friends and family to request stuff and movies and shows on your media server. It'll automatically get downloaded, handled, and everything. So that's what you kind of want to strive for. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about. So if you don't really know anything, you're just like, okay, I download torrents. That's all I do. I'm not gonna remember. The whole point of this is conceptual, and there's going to be some conceptually technical information that's important, but it's not going to cover exact, functions, a certain thing. Oh, I got to do this, and this. I'm going to try my best, though, to cover the technical stuff. Now, this guide assumes that you know about Docker. It assumes that you know what Docker is, how it works. There's a separate video I did for Docker Compose and Docker and UnRAID. So you're going to want to start with that video, and I'll link it in the description below. Now, once you've watched that video, welcome. So I'm assuming you just watched that video. And so now you have an understanding of what Docker networking is. What is a Docker? It's a container, right? But moreover, it's essentially like a sandbox. And what the community application side of Docker is, how to download programs, etc. So now you know all these things. We're going to cover the programs that create a media server, that make it incredible. This video is also not going to cover Plex Meta Manager or Plex Image Cleanup, because that was already covered in a separate video. What this is going to cover is specifically Radarr, Sonarr, AutoScan, and it's going to cover that environment in addition to the torrent that you'll utilize, the torrent client that you'll utilize to download torrents by utilizing these programs to sort your media library. It's also going to cover directory structure, so that's where the technical detail comes in conceptually. It's not going to be like, oh, you need to go here and put this in the config, unless I felt it's super important that it's not been covered in the Wikipedias for individual programs. Then, we can get into the conceptual of certain things like that. But for the most part, that's the whole point of this video. So let's get started. So currently, let's say you have a library and you have, a downloads folder. You're putting movies in there, TV shows in there. Step one, you knock that the hell off. No more. You're never going to do that again. I want you to sit with that for a second. And say this to yourself. I will not just download and slap stuff into a downloads folder like an idiot and then put that into Plex as a library and then tell whoever I'm watching together with, hey, go into the downloads library and look for this movie. None of that crap anymore. You will no longer do that. Instead, you're going to utilize programs to grab movies or TV shows. It's going to organize them for you into different directory structure that we're going to cover the concepts of. And for that, I might also utilize, Paint or what have you. So let me get rid of this here. I might utilize just something simple like, Paint to just simply draw out the concepts of all the stuff that I'm talking about. So we're going to talk about radar and sonar. So what is radar and what is sonar? Radar is simply something that grabs your movies from your indexers. What is an indexer? It's your torrent sites, okay? And you're going to essentially add your torrent sites as indexers, and radar is going to search them in simple terms for movies and then grab the movie that you want. Now, it gets a little more complex conceptually than that, but just let's start there. Sonar is for TV shows. It'll grab TV shows you want from the indexers you have. Now, there are advanced functions, right? There's things like, quality profiles. We talked about in another video, we talked about notifier, all this stuff and all that. Quality profiles, custom formats to arrange how your radar or sonar will grab certain releases. Now, I have already covered that in something called the trash guide and notifier video, so I'm not going to cover that here. This is more for how to set up. For now, we're going to discuss just the intro of these programs. The radar, sonar, these programs are called Starr apps. Starr. You notice the ARR here? ARR. We are also going to cover 2 instances of each. You're probably like, well, why would you want 2? It's quite simple. If you share your media server with people or devices that aren't 4K, you want to be able to provide different versions of the movies. So let's say you have an HD copy of 1917, but you also have a 4K copy. You don't want to be restricted to just, for your server only watching an HD copy, right? And so you don't want your people who have access to your library to be forced to watch 4K if their devices can't play Dolby Vision, right? HDR. So they'll get a really muted out screen. So in that case, that's where multiple instances come in. But before we get into even that, let's get into structures. So initially, you have your structures. I know the way that I did it. I'm going to kind of blow it up here. I used to have a structure like this, just literally a downloads folder, okay? So I had a downloads folder, and let's call this guy here. Let's call this guy Plex, okay? This is Plex here. And what I would do is I would just literally grab torrents. Let's say these are torrents, okay? And these torrents would literally just be fed into Plex like this, okay? And Plex had what I would call a downloads library, okay? So we're just going to call it libraries, and underneath here I had downloads, movies, and TV shows, just like that. Very simple. Now, there's a few problems with this whole thing. Number one, if you want to share your stuff and you end up getting a 4K copy of something, you're kind of screwed, because your family or friends, they can't stream the 4K stuff, and let's be real, it's pretty demanding, or it might require something called transcoding, right, where direct play by Plex isn't a thing. So this is a horrible thing, because what ends up happening is TV shows, there's not many 4K, so you're kind of okay there. Movies, however, I had like a mishmash of, let's call it 4K like this, 4K downloads, and HD downloads like this. And I would have like a mishmash of 4K and HD downloads, just kind of here or there. And it was pretty unorganized. The folders were, just the movie name. I used to just have all the movies just literally as files in the movies folder, which it's okay. You could get away with that. But really what I'm going to cover is trash guide renaming. So, but let's just stick to the introductory data directory before we get into file names. So the issue with this again is if you have various qualities, right? I'm doing a lot of, back-end maintenance on my computer, right? I'm making this like my computer here. I'm doing a lot of work. It's like a filing cabinet, right? It's like very analog. And it's just not good. Sometimes Plex wasn't picking up movies. Then we have this is the worst thing you can do. I had the notion that I would have a downloads directory of movies I didn't really want to keep long term. Now, does this mean I'm going to grab the movie and hit and run on the torrent tracker? No, it just means I didn't want to keep those damn movies on there. So I would use a downloads directory for junk stuff. So, someone asked, hey, let's watch this tonight. I would, Princess Diaries, I'll put Princess Diaries there. There's a lot of folders there. And I just, inside of downloads, I did have a movies and TV shows folder. But again, it was very kind of messy. Some movies would be in there, they wouldn't. And so that's the thing. TV shows was a little more organized, but it's still the filing cabinet. And of course, it wasn't picking up a lot of my retro tunes. Plex would mismatch things. It still has a little tinkerings of mismatching here or there, but that would happen too. So before you can even, if you look at this UnRAID screen, first of all, if you're not with UnRAID, I extremely recommend you get UnRAID. Not Windows Docker. I'm sure there's someone out there who's just an expert at Windows Docker, but it's a hellfire I'd rather not get into. So this is an UnRAID forward and UnRAID only guide. And if you're someone who's like, well, I don't need UnRAID, I don't care what it is, blah, 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 it's stupid, or I have Linux, and believe me, I have Linux too, Debian Bookworm, manual bare bones metal Linux, you'll want UnRAID. There's no shame in Linux, the customization, all this stuff, but I'm saying if you really want to make your life simpler on top of the complexity that these Starr apps and all these different little apps and user scripts already add, you want UnRAID. So now this is the problem here, is that you can't really have a structure like this. This is bad news. Okay, this sort of structure is it's frowned upon. It's a no. It's an X. You really don't want to do it. Instead, what you want to do is you want no downloads directory in Plex. You want movies, okay? And you want TV shows. You want two libraries. Now, two parent libraries. Why do I say parent? I'll get into that soon. And you'd no longer want this downloads link there. So none of this stuff. None of that. And we're going to go ahead and just drag this over to the left side of the screen. This is kind of what you want, okay? Libraries, movies, and TV shows. Now, these are called parent libraries. And moreover, you want an internal structure that is clean that is a joy to explore. Okay, guys, I have been disorganized for a very long time. It is shameful for me to admit that, but it's true. I have been disorganized for a very long time. We're talking years. And I knew about Radarr and Sonarr for a long time. And my understanding of them was, they just make it kind of longer to grab movies and stuff. Truthfully, that was my impression of them. And it was a very misguided and uneducated impression based on no real understanding, based on no real willingness to learn. So if this kind of sounds like you need to keep watching, and you want to really start utilizing these programs to their fullest, because I'm telling you what, I started and I'm a believer, and I really am not for the frou-frou. I'm not for the over the top, I need it to look shiny and cute. I just needed to work, and I needed to work quick. This will make it so quick once you get all those foundations laid down, the solid foundations of these programs. Yes, does that take time? Absolutely. Does it require months of reading? Yes, it does require months of reading to really understand the nuances of them. But does it require months to kind of understand if you have a video like this? Probably not as much. I'm probably saving you guys a lot more time. Because I'm not a fan of YouTube. I know this will be shocking. I'm not a fan of YouTube tutorials because they try to make it very fast and zip and hip and cool and subscribe, like, comment. I don't really give a shit about any of that. I just want to put out a video that someone who really trusts in me wants to watch, and they're willing to give me that trust, and I'm not going to mislead them. Again, I'm not an expert in any of these things I'm covering. This is a tutorial for me, for myself, and hopefully you'll learn something along the way. And if you don't like it, that's fine. You don't got to leave a nasty comment. You could just say, I don't like it. You can close out of it. I'm not asking anyone to subscribe or like But hey, guys, make sure to subscribe, like, and no, I'm just kidding. So, we're going to cover, so the data directory structure, we want movies and TV shows. Now, what do I mean by enjoyable? So remember from the Docker video, I don't know if you guys remember, Docker is a container. Okay. It's like a box. Okay. And inside of Docker runs a program, if you will. Let's call it, Radarr, right? For the movies program. So these programs, remember, there's something in all of these wikis that talks about something called internal, external path naming, consistency of path naming as it pertains to Dockers. That consistency extends not only inside of the container, but exists outside, and they're linked. If you have a messy outside, you're going to have a brutal inside. So you want to start from scratch with your data directory. So remember that Docker containers are like sandboxes. And these sandboxes, I don't believe I covered this in that video, but sandboxes, what all these wikis for all these apps are talking about is they have their own VFS. What is a VFS? It's a virtual file system. So imagine, for example, this Docker container. I should have made that square a little more like this, okay? And, oh my God, what am I doing? Okay. So we're going to call this, the Radarr Docker, okay? And imagine like essentially a filing cabinet, okay? And in this filing cabinet, there's files, right? There's like path directories. Okay, each of these lines represents a directory. So if you were to go inside of the container, you would see stuff like / potatoes, all this stuff. So just put any name, okay? Now, if you had another container, okay? If you had another container, let's call it AutoScan, for example. We'll call this We'll call this one Radarr. Okay. And we'll call this one AutoScan. You're probably like, why is he talking about containers right now? What is this? So it's kind of important because I want to give a solid foundation for why I'm making you start from scratch. I think that's something that I think should be explained. So this is AutoScan. AutoScan is a tool that basically constantly scans directories for changes. Let's just leave it like that. It's going to be something you're going to want to use eventually. I'm not going to cover right now why. But it also has its own, you know, let's not call it a filing cabinet, but let's call it like a card or virtual file system, like a hard drive. And this hard drive has folders in it, okay? Once you look in the container. So remember, a container has a host path and a container path for variables, for ports, but also for paths, right? Variables, ports, and paths. So directories, basically. Variable stuff is you know, different. Ports is for defining ports. But if you were to define, if let's say inside of AutoScan it looked at /movies, for example. Okay? Movies. It says, okay, point me to your movies folder. And you were to go, okay, /movies, that's gonna be, you know, so that's gonna be movies inside, okay, and then outside it's gonna be, you know, mount movies. This is the directory outside the container, okay? And inside, it's movies. Okay? So, let's say in Radarr, you wanted to add your movies folder, right? You go, so Radarr asks you, okay, what is, you know, the movies folder? So you say, okay, the movies folder is /movies, okay? And same thing, you go, it's /mount /movies, which is, you know, which is fine. And it will see that. Where it'll see the mount /movies. So if you go into the movies folder in the Radarr container by doing docker, you know, container list, and you were to then docker exec -it bin bash, that's just look up how to enter a Docker container, right? And you were to go into this /movies directory that would show up in the virtual file system, you would see your local mount /movies, right? And same here on AutoScan, you would see mount /movies. So you're like, okay, pretty straightforward. Where, you know, which is, you'll be like, okay, I understand. Where you're kind of going to start running into issues is how you start defining it with your download client. So again, the easiest way I can say is, and I'm going to just show you guys how I set it up, is I keep the paths completely consistent across all the containers. You know, while there are containers that say, oh, go do /movies, /TV, you know, /TV as the container path, you really, really don't want to do that. And it's frowned upon. So if there's ever a container that goes /movies, /TV, /comedy, you really don't want to do that sort of stuff. And that's my understanding of it. So you really want to do it where it's consistent across all these containers. So if you take a look at Radarr, for example, I have the /data folder as mount user data. Okay. And if you look at QBitTorrent, I have /data/torrents as mount user data torrents. Okay. Do you kind of see how, again, /data/torrents is /mount/user/data/torrents. The reason this is crucial is because when Radarr gets information from QBitTorrent about something having finished downloading in the /data/torrents folder, Radarr can't see into the containers folder. Okay. So again, in this example with the movies and mount/movies, if let's say AutoScan if Radarr was reporting, hey, I have movies here that I downloaded under /movies. This is the container path, right? And AutoScan wasn't mapped as /mount/movies, and /movies was, for whatever reason, something else. You know what I mean? So it wouldn't look correct. So remember, these are two separate file systems. Just remember, containers have two different disks and they have different mount points. They cannot see each other's mount points. So Radarr can't look into AutoScan. AutoScan can't look into Radarr. So keeping it persistent is crucial. So if Radarr is referring to /movies, okay, as, mount/movies, then you want to also make sure that /movies in AutoScan is also referring to mount /movies. And again, you can lose track of that pretty easily. You know what I'm saying? It could be pretty quick to do that. So I don't really get too hyper specific on naming. In fact, I even changed my Plex one to data/media. I even changed that because remember, at the end of the day, I want it to be persistent. So if AutoScan tells Radarr, if Radarr tells AutoScan, hey, look in movies, okay, AutoScan's /movies will be the exact same. It will look like the exact same folder as in Radarr, without me having to work overtime and be like, oh, what was the path again? /mount /Jerry /movies, or was it /mount and /movies? And it can get really out of hand. And so it's a little hard to explain in the painting. Let me get into the nitty gritty between these two containers. So we're going to cover the settings pages. We're going to go into the settings pages and we're going to cover certain things. But let me show you kind of what it is in terms of my structure. And this is something that I do. I do /data. It's that simple. So I have a user share in UnRAID, okay, just simply called /data. And I have it accessible through SMB. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like this: data /data. Very simple. You go, okay, so you have a folder on your UnRAID called data, right? And under that, I have assets, media, and torrents, 3 folders. And you go, okay, well, this seems like it's not that complicated. And how are you possibly getting that organized? Well, we're going to cover this, but let's just stick to the parent folder right now, data. I'm going to blow up the volume mappings here. And again, we're still talking about that persistent stuff that these applications talk about. So there we go. Docker guide. We're going to, right here is the section called consistent and well-planned paths, which is a little confusing when I first read it. I was like, I have no idea what the hell they're saying. It's like gibberish. And I read it, and you can read it, and it might make complete sense to you, in which case, kudos, you're a genius. For me, it didn't make a whole lot of sense until I just barreled through and did it for a few weeks. But here I'm going to explain something. Remember from the Docker video, these containers, they're sandboxes, and the sandboxes have virtual file systems. These containers talk to each other, and they refer to folders in their virtual hard drive. So if you start making very custom names per container, you're going to have a really, really bad time. So you want to see a lot of the same directory across all the containers. Hence the term consistent and well-planned paths. What does that mean? So I have a /data directory. And in it, I have media and torrents, okay? For Radarr and Sonarr, because they're the media servers, I give it full access to those 3 folders: media, assets, torrents. I just do. In fact, I'm just like, yeah, just take a look at everything. It doesn't matter. And because why? Let's go over it. Because it needs media to add movies into my media library, but it also needs to download them, remember? It's because they're linked to my download client, QBitTorrent, which is going to get a request from these Radarr or Sonarr for a movie or a TV show, and it's going to download it. So they will always have access to the parent folder data. QBitTorrent does not need access to the library. It is simply there to fetch files like a puppy or a dog. I prefer puppy. So I gave it /data /torrents. Remember one thing, guys. Remember one thing. In UnRAID, the left side is the container. The right side is the friggin' host path. Whereas in Linux, it's the opposite. Host path, container path. So UnRAID switches it. It's a little funny that way. UnRAID's a little scamp, but that's what's going on. So again, the container says, okay, in /data /torrents, you're going to show this folder, mount user data torrents. Inside of that, let's take a look inside of that. What is inside of that? Wow. 2 folders, movies, TVs. Remember, this is a media specific guide, so I keep it very media specific. I used to utilize my Linux as a separate download box and all this stuff, and I was using CIFS and SMB to connect to Plex on UnRAID. It was this whole back and forth over the top thing. Don't do that. Don't be stupid. Have everything on one machine. Don't be me. In any case, downloads, I don't download to this box. Only movies and TV shows get downloaded. Any sort of software, video games, I just download on my computer. Simple as that. I don't want them on my making write operations to my media server. I want to keep that very clean. So I no longer do that. Doesn't mean you have to. It's just my choice. You can definitely put a downloads folder. There's no shame in that. But I don't do it. And inside of here, we have the files from the torrents that get grabbed. So notice something very peculiar. Notice how the torrent client says /data /torrents. That's where it's the default download directory. Okay. So when QBitTorrent finishes a download, it sends a signal. Radarr monitors it for a signal. And QBitTorrent says, okay, the files that I just downloaded for the movie you asked me to grab is in /data torrents. If this /data torrents does not look the exact same folder, aka mount user data torrents, to Radarr, it will claim your file is missing. Hence, we come back to consistent and well-planned paths. So the /data is interesting because what I've done is, rather than me get really technical and be like, okay, it was mount user data torrents, and then I need to tell Radarr that there's a /data /torrents that's mount user data torrents. Let's just give it /data. Give it the whole damn thing. and tell it that's the mount path, right? So when it sees from QBitTorrent /data/torrents, it's going to go into its /data folder. And inside of the /data folder, you know what it's going to see? It's going to see this. And then there's going to be a torrents file there. Huh. So that's interesting. So think about it again. It's going to see that /data /torrents. But we don't have to define a separate, container path /data /torrents, right? This is why it's so crucial not to do /movies and /TV shows. And then you're like having to play around with these values, the host path, way too much. And God forbid you start changing file library names or something, and then you're going, oh, what was that library for movies? Oh, no, yeah, I changed it to cool movies. You don't want to have to do any of that. So for these Starr apps, just give it /data. Okay, and it's going to see everything under data. So anything in any other program that refers to /data/ whatever the hell, Radarr and Sonarr will just see it automatically without you having to constantly define every single mount point. Again, I think this can be really confusing. If someone's really hearing this for the first time, they're probably, what the hell is he talking about? Again, the whole point of consistent and well-planned paths is so that you're not having to do so much crazy stuff on the host path side. You're not having to point to very specific folders for specific container paths like crazy. It's very intuitive. It all looks like one big hard drive. So all these separate containers with separate hard drives suddenly think, okay, so if they have separate hard drives, right? Separate hard drives. Okay. If all they have is separate hard drives, if you define /data as the same basic folder, mount user data, on all of them, suddenly to all these containers, that one folder is like in one big hard drive. And they can all see the same folder. That's what that means. Let that sink in. It's really crucial to understand this before we proceed. And it's very crucial that I think if you aren't using a /data folder, you could call it /media server. You could call it /share1. Let's see what the guide says. Yeah, you could call it whatever. You could call it /DVR, but it's suggested to use /data. It's just going to be easier. So just do what they're saying. These are very smart people, and they do know their stuff. I am literally on the shoulder of giants here with this video. Let's not forget that. As all man and learning is, it's on the shoulder of those great people that came before them. So that's all that means, is consistent and well-planned paths. It means make it all look like one big hard drive. Even though these containers all have individual hard drives or virtual file systems, we're trying to make it look like for one directory, they are all seeing the exact same thing. Even though you can define that directory. Remember, /data can be defined as any freaking folder on your host path. Anything. It doesn't have to be mount user data, right? You could just call it /potatoes, /dumbass, /this, /that. Because it can be anything. It can look different to all these containers. So that's the whole point of consistent and well-planned paths, is we want it to look like one big hard drive that has one folder that they all can see the same information on. I'm assuming that you understood that completely. Now, if you didn't, I apologize. Go ahead and keep watching it over and over, or work through the guide and you'll kind of see what's going on. But I think the best example I gave was QBitTorrent telling Radarr, hey, I got movies in /data /torrents, and Radarr will not go to mount user data torrents. It goes here. So it looks within its own container for /data /torrents. So if you don't have a /data /torrents, as defined on the left side, it will go like no path exists, or there is no folder with this movie name in there. So that's the best example I can give to make this whole consistent and well-planned thing make sense, because I was not understanding a lick of it until I understood why they're talking to each other and kind of what happens. So again, remember, these containers only can see this path. So QBitTorrent says, hey, I gotta download in /data/torrents. And then Radarr is going to be like, okay, I'll look in /data/torrents. And if you don't have that on this side, you're screwed. But because I have /data leading to this folder, Radarr can see everything. /data/torrents, right? So it can see all the folders. Hence, consistent and well-planned paths. For the last and 15th time, I'm hammering that because it's so crucial. If you don't have that basic foundation down, you're so screwed. Don't move forward unless you really understand kind of what I'm saying. And go ahead and read the Docker guide here as well for consistent and well-planned paths if you need further technical clarification. Now, we're going to cover Radarr. Are you guys ready? So, Radarr, again, what is Radarr? What does it mean? Who is it? So let's go to the web UI real quick. And I'm going to type in my password. And we can see automatically all these movies, okay? You can do posters, whatever. Radarr monitors these movies, and it monitors them because it will always grab the best quality from your indexers or your torrent sites. That's the whole point of this, is so you get the best quality all the time. And we can cover, I'm not sure right now if I want to cover quality profiles. I believe I did cover that in the trash guide video. I could be wrong, but I might touch up on it again. Maybe this will become a general Radarr usage guide. But I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube videos out there, so I don't know. If I'm not covering it here, you know, I might cover it in the notifier section a little bit better when it comes to that. I think I will. But again, this is not a Radarr, what is it type of guide, but it is assuming you know what Radarr is. It is assuming that you understand it monitors stuff and downloads movies and all this stuff. It assumes that you know there's a token under settings in general, and it assumes you know how to set up your indexers, and you know it assumes that you know how to set up your download client. And again, remember, I talked about that in the Docker guide video in terms of domain name system inside of Docker containers, all that stuff. Again, if you have not watched the Docker Compose Docker UnRAID video, go back to that. It is important, okay? Watch that. It is a prerequisite. Watch that video. But this assumes you have your download client, everything set up. And again, this is a conceptual overview of once I got these programs set up, what should I do in terms of my directory? So I would just mimic what I'm doing here. Data, assets, media, torrents. Create the assets folder. You'll thank me that you did, because that's going to play into Plex Meta Manager, which is not going to be covered in this video. It is in another video, Plex Meta Manager. Look up in this channel. But we're not going to cover that in this video right now. This is again, how to set up Radarr and Sonarr, and for not just set up Radarr and Sonarr, but how to do it so that there's two instances, one 4K and one HD. So I used to have, remember, we talked about my sort of essential, let's get rid of the consistent and well-planned example. I used to have two folders, movies, TV shows, that's it. And everything would be under there. Kids movies, just freaking everything. Everything and anything was freaking under there. Okay? But what I've now resorted to is very simply creating a level of organization that I'm so happy about. Let me show you. Let's go under media. Wow. Look at all these folders, right? It's very intuitive, right? If you're watching this, it's very intuitive. Other than random crap. Yes, I still, you can see a little bit of my old habits in there. I do have a random crap folder that I should not have in there, but do as I say, not as I do. And I have a folder called .dance. This is for the Plex dance. What is the Plex dance? Is if something is screwy and no matter what you're doing, it's not scraping correctly, do the Plex dance. Move it out of your folder, refresh Plex, clean the bundle, clean the bundle, clean the trash, drag it back in, rescan the library, the Plex dance. I still sometimes find myself doing that, so I create a .dance directory outside of the directories which are monitored by Plex. Do not do what I did in the past and create a non-scan directory inside of these directories. That is stupid, and you should, slap yourself if you do that. I already did. So I have Movies HD, Movies HD Kids, Movies Ultra HD, Movies Ultra HD Kids, TV Anime. You're probably like, well, where's Movies Anime? I'll explain that in a little bit. TV Educational, TV HD, TV Kids, TV Ultra HD. You're probably like, that's a shitload of folders. And it is. But it's also going to make it so that you don't just have one TV show's library filled with 50 million cartoons like me. And then all of a sudden you're trying to be like, where was Succession again? It's under the S, but where exactly? Oh, between Scooby-Doo and I forget some other S show, Snagglepuss probably, right? So you need to also avoid that, because if you also have children, you don't want to give them access to Succession or Sex in the City, right? Start doing this now. Get the solid foundations of well-planned paths now. This is all part of that. Let me show you what a folder can look like. Inside of the movies folder, this is the Ultra HD folder. And we have all these Ultra HD movies. Notice the movies folders, how they are. These are, again, I want to say this is all based on Trash Guide. Now, what is Trash Guide? Well, Trash Guide is it's essentially a database of good naming schemes for Radarr, Sonarr, Bazaar. It has recommended stuff for like Plex, Plex tips, profiles, suggested Plex media server settings. It is essentially a user who created guides that really make his home media server work for him. And that's what a trash guide is. So going back to the example here is, if we go to 300, for example, you can see kind of how it's been named. Okay. So this is my 300. Following the trash naming guide, it defines the title, the year, the TMDB ID, whether or not the source, what kind of source is it, So this one says hybrid. So it means it's a hybrid source. Remux 2160p with Dolby Vision HDR10 and True HD Atmos 7.1. Again, go to the trash video where we cover how to set up your Radarr, mostly just Radarr, but you can follow the same tips for Sonarr. How to set up Radarr and Sonarr to automatically grab releases, and release names can sometimes have a bunch of dots and random stuff in it. How to make it into a very nicely readable format with specific identifiers that indicate the quality of the file. Once you understand that you want proper naming, you want to be able to slap that in to essentially directories that are persistent and well planned. And each of these directories, or as Radarr and Sonarr calls them, root paths. Again, root paths. So if we look at my HD Sonarr, which is located at 7879, not 7878. Gee, I wonder which Radarr instance that is. Well, that would be my... Well, should we check it? Should we check it, folks? Well, let's take a look. Do these look familiar? Gee, I wonder. 1917. Okay, 300. Addams Family? Well, now that's unusual. The Addams Family, yes. Blade Runner, yes. Coco. Oh, what folder is this? The Ultra HD folder. So root paths are like this. So this is the benefit of root paths. And not only that, but it also allows you to sync up your quality settings for the sizes in accordance with trash. So, you know, you could theoretically get away with having 4K titles and HD titles together and all that stuff in one mishmash of things. And, you know, you can definitely set quality type, you know, for 2160p, which would be your Ultra HD, and you could have it all in one library. But you cannot ask Radarr to monitor quality for Ultra HD and HD copies separately. It can only hold one format of the movie. So you notice how these say unmonitored, because I already know I have the best quality, or I don't want Radarr to touch them. But let's take a look at what was 7879, right? Password is happy time. Oop, did I say that out loud? Well, whatever. So you see how it's monitored here? So it can only really monitor, once again, for one quality profile. So if you have 300 as an Ultra HD, it can monitor for an Ultra HD profile that you might have in one library. But again, you can't have two copies of 300 in the same library as of Radarr, one HD, one 300 Ultra HD. You cannot do that. It will not allow duplicates of movies. You can certainly combine and mix and match Ultra HD and HD if you want to do that. The only instance, pay very close attention, the only instance you want to do that is if you're not sharing your library. If you're like, hey, Michael, I don't share my library. I don't give a shit if some are Ultra HD, some are HD. I don't care. I want it my way. Then fine. You don't have to follow this two Radarr, two Sonarr instances. But if you are someone who shares their library, could you imagine grandmama going to like 300, right? The real tragedy, right? Because you have a cool grandmama who wants to see 300 and she goes on 300, she clicks it and it can't stream because it's 4K. Would you do that to grandmama? I don't know why I keep saying grandmama, but grandma, would you do that to her? No, you'd give grandma an HD copy, right? But you want to start getting into the habit of not having to manually grab an HD copy of 300, putting it into the downloads folder. Hey, grandma, go to the down. You know, people that you're sharing with are probably not technical like you. So you have to do all the technical legwork to make it easy on them. So that's the key with two Radarr instances. You can have duplicates of movies. You can have an HD version of 300 and an Ultra HD version of 300. And so that's what I'm going to teach you how to set up. So right now, if we go back to Docker here, you can kind of already see that I already have it set up. I'm not going to remove them and do anything super crazy like that because I already got it where I want it. But I'm going to show you how to grab these two instances on Docker and how to set it up. So first step you're going to do, we're going to get into this, is we go to apps. Okay. Now this is the community applications. What is this? Say it with me. Community applications plugin that you can get on the UnRAID forums. I forget. It's a very nice person who started this whole shingamagig. You put it into your plugins folder on UnRAID. You start up your array, right? All your shares are loaded, and like you named your data folder. You have these 3 folders mimicking mine. You have your media. You have your torrents folder with movies and TV in there, and you have your assets folder. This is not that important for anything we're covering in really this video. That's more for Plex Meta Manager, but you want to have the data folder. You get into your apps. You start going, okay, Sonarr. Boop, 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 right? Sonarr. No, you know what? I'm going to start with Radarr. It's the one that me and Radarr have a huge history. So I'm going to start with Radarr. When you first get Radarr, you're going to want to change its name, right? Just call it Radarr Backup so that you can grab the second Radarr from hot.io. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. So if you already have it named, once you rename it, you can then install the other one from hot.io. So there are all these repositories, okay? There's a Linux server repository. There's a x77 repository. There's a Ulysses repository. Oh, there's AutoScan. We'll talk about that later. There's all these repositories. You're like, dude, why is there 90 of these? Which one do I grab? Each repository is by a specific, let's call them repo, right? Or like distribution site. And they kind of have little tweaks of their own repository built off of the similar Starr code. A lot of them, they push updates differently, etc. Notice the Linux server Radarr web UI icon is black and yellow. The other ones are keeping it very, very traditional to what the Radarr team wants. So, if you go under install, and okay, it's fine. I'm going to hit okay. I'm going to choose the latest. Okay, 7877. Okay, this is one of the reasons that people don't really like Linux server. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to bash anybody here, but you notice how they put container path movies, container path downloads, and all this, these different this is horrible. These are bad. Do not do this, because it comes back down again is where you're getting too specific. You go, okay, my downloads was, my downloads folder, my movies was, it was mount movies, and then you get Jerry movies, and then it's not consistent when you go to another path. When it asks for movies, you might be like, okay, well, it's for that path, it'll just be mount Cindy movies. So it's not consistent. And so see note and application setup. So they have a note there probably telling you, hey, if you do a / movies in the container, then for the other container, you also gonna have to add / movies. But then when you go into let's say QBitTorrent's container, right? If we go into it and we go into QBitTorrent's freaking container and we go install, suddenly there's no movies. There's a / data, but there's no movies. So you're like, how do I reference where the movies download folder is? So it gets really bad real quick. So my recommendation is you grab hot.io. Hot.io's thing, or one of these other ones, or check out the Docker guide once again. Did they mention Linux server? Yeah. So they mention Linux server have images for a lot of software, and they're well maintained. However, avoid their suggested optional paths. They tell you which of their Starr apps they have, and I believe they also recommend, hot.io. They recommend hot.io. They don't make any poor path suggestions. Images are updated 2 times in 1 hour. Hot.io also builds our pull requests, except Sonarr, which may be useful for testing. So I'm following the guided Starr guide recommendation. We're going to install hot.io. So once you go ahead and get into installing hot.io, it's going to show you, let me just pop one of these things up here. It's going to show you something like this. It's going to say, okay, whoop, it's going to pop it open. Now, because you watched the Docker guide video, this will be saying something like this. It'll say bridge when it first creates a template. You're smarter than that. So hey, I want to create a custom server and call it media server. Okay, that's what you're going to do. You're going to create a custom media server. You're going to say, but Michael, how do I create a custom media server? Good question. I forgot the command. But if you Google Docker, how to create custom media server, it's something like Docker network create and then the name. And it'll create it for you. And then when you go under, adding Radarr, it will show you that media server. So you're going to choose your custom. In my case, the network type or the network card is media server. Remember, just like these containers have separate hard drives and we're trying to get one folder to look like it's all the same on all these containers, aka that it's all one big hard drive, right? We want them all to think that they're on one big network card or one big router. They don't have 8 different routers. They have the one router, and that router is called media server. So this is important because if you forgot, I'm going to mention it here, but Docker can then containers can reference each other instead of you having to constantly type 192.168.1.8 / 7878 is Radarr. You could just type Radarr 7878. So that is crucial. So that's the whole point of network configuration. Next up, console shell. We're going to keep that bash because remember, bin bash allows you to enter the container. Once again, the command for that is docker space -exec space -it space bin bash. Next, host port for 7878. Notice something here. I created this after. This was created after. So you're probably confused. You're like, well, that's not what that looked like. I had a 4K library first. So let me actually pop this open. But I edited out. So this is what it looked like, right? So I had one container called Radarr, okay? I changed that into my 4K library. I put 4K. I kept 7878 the same because at home I watch Ultra HD primarily, not HD. So I wanted my first Radarr 7878. Doesn't matter. It's not technically the first, but the earliest port number to reference the Ultra HD library, which it does. Then, and again, I did edit out. I edited. I believe was that edited host port. No, that was probably there. That name host port for 7878. Container port. So the container will see 7878, and I put 7878. If you don't know what I'm talking about, stop. Go to the Docker Compose guide and the Docker guide, Docker overview guide that I made. You must learn that before you start any of this. I can't stress that enough. People start this by thinking it's just whatever, and then they realize very quickly they have no idea what the fuck's going on because they don't know what Docker is. Learn Docker, then do this. So otherwise you're going to feel like I'm going pretty fast. You're like, well, why the hell is he explaining anything? Because I assume you took the prerequisite. Right? You don't go into calculus without knowing algebra, right? We're not going to explain all of algebra to you. Next up, host path for config. So every container, remember, they add something into, it depends. However, the Docker file is what creates the image that these containers are based off of. They reference mount user app data, and I just put, okay, I want you to put it in 4K, Radarr 4K. And as you can see, that it creates those come after, but when you first create it, you won't see this pop up because it wouldn't have ran or created these yet. Now for data, I'm giving it again everything, mount user data, the data share that everything is in. Now the key with UnRAID is that you never want to run Docker containers as root, and so that's what this is: PUID and PGID. Primary user ID and primary group ID is 99:100 is the shorthand, or 99 being users nobody. Nobody is a default user. It's really nobody. And PGID 100 is nobody, and PGID 100 is that's true. I forgot what PGID. I believe PGID 100 is users. Now, you want to keep this PUID and PGID the same across all of them. You know how when you're doing manual Linux stuff, they tell you make sure that roottorrent is running the same user and it has right permissions to the download directory and all. This is important. Whatever your PUID and PGID here is, or just make a habit of making them all the same. UMask 002 is basically its way for saying 0775 permissions. It's going to create, I believe, 775 is read, write, execute, read, execute, or maybe I might just have that wrong. But it's a way for saying whenever you create files, it's going to be 775 on the folders and 664 on the files. In terms of, once again, adding path, port, or variable, we'll cover that with QBitTorrent because that's going to be important there. But first, you're going to create this. Okay, you're going to call it Radarr 4K. You're going to do this, and you're going to create it. Now you're going to go to App Store again. You're going to create one that says Radarr. It's going to have these settings. Okay, notice how everything is very much the same. Sonarr, same thing. Get the Sonarr app. Okay, and you're going to point it to a config file of your choosing, located under mount user app data. Don't stray from this. That's stupid. Keep it consistent. And again, mount user data, keep it consistent. And one of those things that I want to cover, however, is that you will get that warning of the port being used that you saw in the video. But for Radarr, you're going to want to change it to 7879 for your second instance instead of 7878. What this means is that I want to run this Radarr instance on port 7879. So it's like an entirely separate website, entirely separate program, entirely separate website, essentially. That's what that's saying. So that's considered a second instance. Once you get all four of these suckers set up, you can start seeing the IP address here. In my case, 898, whatever I put, 8989, 7878, 8990. And you guys might be wondering, well, Sonarr by default is 8989, but you didn't make that 4K, whereas your Radarr 4K is the Radarr default. I'm going to say that again. My Sonarr library, aka my H non 4K, is 8989, the default. But my non 4K is not the default, which is 7878. Why is that? Well, because again, I'm following Trash Guide, and Trash Guide doesn't really suggest 4K for TV shows. He doesn't. If you go on it, he mostly agrees that, yeah, you want to stick to, WebDL and mostly HD. He does mostly HD, but it doesn't mean you have to. You can certainly make 8989 Sonarr 4K. If you say, no, Michael, I only watch 4K. Okay, then make Sonarr 4K 8989. The world is yours. Now, then you're going to read all of the Starr guides. Okay, I'm not going to go into it, but you're going to set up your indexer. Okay, you're going to add your indexers. You're going to set up your download client, QBitTorrent. But before you can do that, you need to get the QBitTorrent template. So this is where it's interesting, because the template for QBitTorrent here is not, it's not exactly how you want it, the template, because I do remember something from it. It usually shows config and data, and it'll show shared port. Oh, and it won't show any of this. So it will show host port. It won't show these two, shared port and UDP. Those are something I added. You might be like, well, why did you add those? Well, when you first launch QBitTorrent, at the bottom, it shows like a little fire icon. And that fire icon is essentially saying firewalled. So it was saying it was firewall, and I was like, I don't understand. I mean, I have the port open that Radarr, that QBitTorrent says it is open. But that's the thing. I didn't define the port outside of the container. So I needed to define it here so that the host machine, 192.168.1.42, could see 6881 being utilized, or whatever you want to type here, 7777. So this container port is for the web UI for QBitTorrent, but how do you add these two? Well, it's simple. Let me show you. You click add another path, port, or variable, and you're going to hit port, and you're going to type this stuff in. The name is the name that shows on the left. The container port is obvious. Host port is 6881, right? I could have put 99999 here, and then it will change this value, but it's not. So I kept it the same. And then I did UDP, and I did TCP because that's what QBitTorrent said. Then I went to my firewall, and I port forwarded based on this local IP of the machine, and restarted the container. Bam, boom, bam. Suddenly, QBitTorrent was connectable. So that, I was unconnectable for like 2 weeks. Saving you guys some time right there. If you try Googling it, people are like, oh, that's normal. You know, it'll just change magically. No, it won't. No, it won't, you moron. It's not going to change magically. Now, one of those things in QBitTorrent, again, is notice one thing that's different here. Host path for /data. That's right. So /data, this is, pay real close attention here, because this wasn't this way. This was like this, /data. Okay. I changed it to /data /torrents, and I made it mount user data torrents. Why? Michael, why did you do this? Because let me show you if you guys don't understand, if you don't understand, okay? It was like this. It was like this. That's what it looked like, okay? So when I was doing it, I was like, okay, well, where's my, torrents directory? Oh, it's under data torrents. This is where it might really click for some of you on that consistent path. So data torrents. So in the QBitTorrent, it was like saying in the folder data, you're going to show torrents. Do you understand, guys? So I was like, oh yeah, my torrents are in data torrents. The issue being, and here's where the issue is really stupid. Once it downloads stuff into data torrents, right? Inside of QBitTorrent, I told it, oh, where do you save the stuff? You're going to save it under /data, right? So it asks you, where's the save path? I put /data. So when freaking Radarr grabbed a movie, it told QBitTorrent, hey, download the movie. QBitTorrent put it in its container path data. Radarr read this data, and guess what Radarr did? Remember, this is why the consistent path is important. Radarr said, oh, you want me to look under data? Well, for me, /data leads to mount user data, which is this folder. Yet, in QBitTorrent, I was basically telling it, hey. So I was basically telling it, hey. So for /data, you're going to point this folder. So if you were to go into that container, you would have seen the torrents file, right? You would have seen it like this. But Radarr saw its data file like this. Whereas QBitTorrent's data file was this. Because I pointed it to the mount point data torrents. Pay close attention if you don't understand that well and consistent thing that everyone was talking about. Once again, this is really where it extremely clicked for me, was because it was not finding the torrents. I was like, I don't understand. The container says data, and I gave it where I put the freaking torrents. So why the hell is fucking Radarr not picking it up? It's because, again, Radarr's data sees it like this. Right? Mount user data. This directory, network, the movie tower, ignore that. Pretend that says /mount, /user, /data. Then you would see this. So Radarr was seeing this, and it was looking for downloads here. It's like, where QBitTorrent? You're saying it was in /data. I don't see it. But /data in QBitTorrent was mounted to this folder, which was like right here. And so there was movies in here. Before I did movies and TV as a folder, there is all these movies in here. We're going to talk about that again as well. Why is there a movies and TV folder here? We're going to discuss that in great detail. And we're going to talk about it. So again, that's the well and consistent thing. So you're going to want to make sure that your /data here, whatever this is, it's matching whatever Radarr is expecting inside of its own /data folder. So Radarr doesn't see /data as /data /torrents, right? No, it doesn't. It sees it as, /mount /user /data, like that. But I didn't want QBitTorrent to save it into just the data folder. So then I should have put in QBitTorrent /data /torrents, but I didn't. I just put /data. But my newbie mind was like, yeah, well, where's the downloads? Oh, it's in mount user data torrents. And then I just told it, oh, put it all in /data before I had the two folders, which is required, by the way. You should have two separate folders. You don't need to, since movies and TV shows don't overlap, but you should. In fact, I believe that was one of the things mentioned in this guide, is that they mention consistency for movies and that. And they do mention downloads don't even need to be sorted into subfolders, since movies, music, and TV will rarely conflict. So again, if it's not making sense to you, think of it this way. I have a box, you have a box. You have a folder in your box, I have a folder in my box. I can't see what's in your folder in your box, and you can't see what's in my folder in my box, unless someone gives us the same folder as a duplicate, that's just the logic, right? So this is what you're doing when you're giving it consistent paths. You're telling these two containers, you guys should be able to see it as if you guys are literally you have the same exact folder. You're in the same house. You're not looking in your own little box. You're looking in one big box with your two little boxes in them. So again, this is the best example I can think of, because when I was very new and I didn't understand Docker, I was putting this as this is what I thought /data. Oh, where's my data? Oh, here's the torrents. But that's not what this is saying. This is saying, what does this folder data that I can see in my box, where is it going? And so you better make sure that wherever this is going, Radar's going to the same damn place. So Radar's /data didn't go here, did it? No. Where did it go? Well, gee, let's take a look. It went here without the torrents. So those have to be the same. Same mount points for the host path, leading to the same internal name. That's all that is. And that's crucial. So now you've downloaded QBitTorrent. You've made sure that your data /torrents is routed to mount user data /torrents, right? It's not just /data. It's a big mistake. You made sure that all your Starr apps, Sonarr, Radarr, they can see the overall /data. QBitTorrent can just see /data /torrents. You went ahead and entered the QBitTorrent area. You port forwarded, like I showed you, to add the ports in there for UDP, TCP. You went ahead and forwarded your ports. And now you are ready to start adding essentially to your Sonarr and Radarr. So here we go into our library import. You created the directories like me, because you're like, okay, I really like that you separated out. So again, if it wasn't clear already why the directories are the way they are, is think about it this way. Movies HD is only Blu-ray 1080p movies. Movies HD Kids is only up to 1080p kids movies. Movies Ultra HD it's a given. Ultra HD Kids, this is something where, there's not many Ultra HD Kids movies, but if there are, for Disney or something, they'll go in there. Because sometimes, I want to watch Ultra HD Kids movies, right? And I don't want to just resort it only to HD Kids. TV anime is obviously TV that's anime specific in terms of genre, animation genre. Now, one thing to note is TMDB. Well, we'll get into TV anime later, but how to set up TV anime and all that for essentially how we get the downloads for TV anime done so that they get automatically tagged and only scraped for indexers that are anime specific. But that's later. TV HD is obviously HD TV. TV Kids. Now, TV HD is like adult stuff. TV Kids is, you know, TV shows that are for kids. Notice there's no TV Kids 4K or TV Ultra HD Kids. Most TV for kids isn't really at 4K. So TV Ultra HD. In the instance, I do want some HD stuff, Ultra HD stuff. So here in Sonarr, the TV platform, we're going to map these as the root folders or root path folders. Data, Media, TV Anime, Data, Media, TV HD, Data, Media, TV Kids. So this, I'm just going to show you the full overview of that. So that's my Sonarr HD. My 4K, well, what do you think? My 4K structure, it's only one folder, right? Ultra HD, so it's going to only have Ultra HD. But let's go ahead and for prosperity's sake, let's show that. There you go. Data, Media, TV, Ultra HD. Okay. Now, one of the things that you definitely want to do is if you're doing anime. Now, anime people, listen here. Other people, if you aren't doing anime, you know, I will probably make a separate distinction in the video, maybe through chapters or something, so you could skip this. But anime people, listen up. For anime, it's recommended, they say, that you have a separate anime radar and Sonarr instance. You can imagine how difficult this already is that I have a radar for HD, radar for 4K. Now I'm going to have a third instance, radar anime. So no, the reason they do that is because there's specific quality definition files. Quality definition is essentially this tab here that defines what the minimum megabytes per hour, or, you know, essentially it is the minimum per hour that you want for the different quality profiles. So for Blu-ray 1080p, I don't want it to be less than, you know, so again, minimum, the left one is minimum, the center is the, you know, the what is it? Oh, center's preferred. And yeah, maximum. I knew the center was preferred, but I was like, then what's the highest one? Yeah, maximum. So I have minimum, preferred, and maximum. So here the minimum that we would say is, okay, 240 megabytes per hour, right? So for 30 minutes, the minimum 1080p Blu-ray anime I would want, or, well, not anime, but, you know, Blu-ray 1080p for Sonarr 4K for a TV show, this Blu-ray would be 120 minutes, right? A 30-minute show, 120 minutes, Blu-ray 1080p. That seems a little... those are the minimum. So obviously if you set it too high, then it won't grab it. So give or take, you know, you want to at least establish a decent minimum. But really, and then of course you could see here is that the Blu-ray Remux, or the, in this case 8990 is the Ultra HD. So we set the quality for that. So, you know, let's look at 2160p. So yeah, nothing less than 2 gigs in it for an hour. For, you know, so 23-minute show, I don't want less than at least 800 gigabytes or something like this. So this is, you know, it's not set too high that where it's not grabbing certain things, but this is all through Trash Guide. Again, if you guys want these specific values and kind of what profiles, quality, custom formats, how that all works, go to the Trash Guide section. Once again, I'm going to try to just look on my channel for trash guides. I would love to put it all in the description, but just go there. But it might be in the description, give or take. So once again, one of the things that you probably want to do is something called auto tagging. So anime people, you're probably like, okay, if I can't distinguish this, what is the deal? Well, auto tagging allows you to automatically use Sonarr or Radarr to tag movies that have the genre of animation on TMDB. But you're probably thinking, but wait a minute, animation can be Pixar, that's English, so how is that anime specific? What if it's going to tag Pixar? Well, great, I'm glad you asked. So we're going to go under settings and tags, and we're going to see that I have an anime tag, of which 5 series were automatically tagged once I added it for one indexer, and there's one auto tagging. So how many, essentially, auto tagging rules define this tag? One auto tagging rule, in this case, the anime rule. So what I did was I said, okay, I want you to put the tags of anime. And for the genre, I want you to do animation. And then for the Japanese VA name, or aka this condition is considered, so there's genre and there's original language. So I did genre, original language, and I put Japanese. So that means it's not going to grab Pixar and tag it anime. So what is the whole point in the tagging thing? Well, first off, when you're downloading, it will also make sure that anything with the, essentially anime tag goes where it goes to, essentially the indexer that is anime specific. The best way that this was explained to me was you don't want to look up Mission Impossible on NYAA, right? Or Tom Cruise movies on that, or vice versa. I mean, you could technically look at anime movies on the one that has Tom Cruise movies, right? But you don't want it to be, you don't want to just search everything on every indexer. So tags is a good way to do that. I just wanted to show for anime what it is. And so again, if I click on this, you will see it put these 5 series, Violet Evergarden, Orange is the Order of Rabbit, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, as anime. And this tag detail anime is tied to this indexer. And here you can literally see that the indexer is tagged anime. Which under this indexer setting, NYA.SI, there's a field there that says tags, and you can put only search this indexer if this tag is present on a release. So whenever that series is added and then it starts to search, before it can search indexers for the quality profiles of the show you want that specific show for, it will get automatically tagged as anime, and then it will know, oh, I should only search NYAA.SI. So again, same concept there. Okay, so enough of anime. Let's get into something with QBitTorrent that I'd like to say is, once you set these up, once you got your indexer, your QBitTorrent, all that stuff, you also want to set up each instance of Radarr and Radarr 4K with a specific category. And you're probably like, what does that mean? Downloader category. So QBitTorrent, RootTorrent, you know how they have categories in them? So let's go ahead and pull that up. Now, notice again at the bottom, we have that port forwarded perfectly, beautiful. But here are the categories, and you can kind of see what's happening here in terms of categories. For each instance of Radarr, right, movies HD, movies 4K, I have categories. So I have a category called movies, movies 4K, TV, and TV 4K. You're probably like, okay, what does this have to do with those things? Now remember, those things, they have root paths, right, that search the folders, like all my folders under media. For the Radarr HD, it has these as the folders, right? HD and HD Kids, right? And obviously, for the TV, it has these folders: TV HD, TV Kids, TV Anime, right? And then there's TV Ultra HD for the second Radarr instance, Sonarr instance, excuse me. But how do we get these programs to automatically tell QBitTorrent, hey, put whatever movie that I'm grabbing as whether I'm Sonarr HD or Radarr HD with Blu-ray 1080p. All these tags do is, if we edit the category, notice something here. So movies 4K and all that. But really what it does is, remember, in terms of QBitTorrent, it's just making sure that it's tracked separately. So movies get added to movies, and movies 4K will speak to only Radarr 4K. Movies HD will only speak, to Radarr HD. So that's really what's happening with that. And same thing for TV. Notice with TV. So category is this, and the safe path is TV. Could you have done TV-4K as the safe path? Now you're probably like, well, what is the safe path? Now let's take a look at the settings here and look at downloads. Remember what I said. The default safe path is /data/torrents, right? It's not just /data. So you really want to do that. /data/torrents. And again, one of the things, make sure you do this, is saving management automatic, because otherwise you're going to have a bad time. Make sure that's automatic. But one of the things that is important with it is that categories is what can specify to QBitTorrent, which directory of torrents it wants to put stuff on. So movies will be separated and be put in the movies folder. TV, whether 4K or TV HD, will be put in TV. I kept it simple. I just said all HD and UHD movies in this, all TV HD and 4K TV in this. Could I have done 2 more folders, movies 4K, TV 4K? Sure, but once you get the system, your priority is not what's under data torrents. You don't really care to be like, oh, I need to just quickly access whichever download is 4K movies. Even if you have 3,000 of them, who cares? Just have them all in one place. At least that's kind of what I think. And of course, movies and TV, I did separate, even though they don't conflict. And you could have torrents as one directory with all the movies and TV shows in it. I did want some level of separation. So that's really crucial. So once you have that set, and let me show you where that gets set as well. So once you do settings or download clients, so we go down, and right here, categories is where I specified it as movies. So what this is telling it is hey, I'm movies, right? Not movies 4K. So I know when I was setting this up, the Radarr is a movies thing only. It doesn't do TV shows. It doesn't do music. So, and again, you can see where that media server network card, instead of 8 routers, there's 1 router for all the containers. Look how easy it makes it. Radarr can see QBitTorrent as just QBitTorrent. I don't have to do 192.168.1.42 port 8080, right? I can just do QBitTorrent. I can reference the container name. Again, password, movies. And so what this will do, and there's some other settings here, post import category. So this is what will happen after the download. You could set a different category for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. There's probably a good reason for it. Otherwise they wouldn't add it. But that's really what you want to do, is also focus on categories in addition to opening up that port and understanding consistent data paths. So now let's talk about what you might be seeing on your end in terms of, in terms of your data path. So now that you have the torrents, TV, and movies folder, you set up categories so each instance of your 4K can slap it with a unique label into TV or movies. That way, really what that's for is for activity, so that when it loads up, if you don't do categories, here's what's going to happen. And I learned the hard way is, if you don't do categories, Radarr HD is going to show everything in Radarr 4K under activity, and Radarr 4K is going to show everything under Radarr HD in activity. And so it's going to be a fucking mess, okay? You want categories. Don't be stupid, okay? Always, always, always have categories. So once you have your categories, and you have your 2 instances of radar, sonar, 4K set up, you have your indexer set up, you have your taggers set up for anime. And again, we're not covering the renaming, trash guide. How do I rename the files, Michael? That's in something called trash guide video. I spent 30 minutes, I think, on that, or somewhere in the neighborhood of that. That is a separate video. This is more of a conceptual for everything. So now that you have radar 4K and sonar 4K and all this cool stuff set up, you want to also make sure that your Plex container is essentially utilizing the same sort of thing. Notice here where I put data media /media is mount user data media. Notice how, again, I'm using that same data structure. Do these other things, radar and sonar, need Plex to be on there? I believe not. I believe they don't. But again, if I'm keeping everything consistent to that /data path for the container path and host path, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to make sure that Plex is also looking like it's on the same hard drive as all the other containers, and it can see the same thing under /data. Though in this case, I did /data /media, I still pointed that exact data /media folder to mount user data media. So once again, what does that mean? It means that Plex can only really see data /media. Now you might be thinking, well, how do I know what Plex can see in there? And maybe, you know, this can also further help. So we're going to try doing something here. We're going to go Docker container list, and then we're going to find where Plex is. Plex, where are you? Plex? I'm actually having a hard time with this. Here it is. 36 whatever is the ID for Plex. So we're going to copy this, and then we're going to go Docker container exec it, paste this in there, /bin/bash. This will put me in the container for what Plex is seeing. And notice this is the Plex container's hard drive. Okay. So in there, I have something called DB repair. This is crucial, and I will probably cover this, but you know, essentially what you do is you do get, you know, db repair.sh, and this db repair.sh is something you must know. It fixes sluggish databases. It does things Plex can't do. So db repair, I run like crazy all the time by doing /db repair.sh. And then, you know, you can stop the database, and it's a really great utility. So please don't be stupid, get db repair. So let's take a look at what it sees in data. Only the media folder. Well, that's weird, Michael, because your data folder has more than just media, right? But Plex only needs to see media. It doesn't need to see my torrents or my assets. So I limited it. And that's the whole point of the left side of the volume mapping, or in UnRAID's case, the container host path, or container with those 2 arrows, right? Host path. It's essentially making a folder, and it's telling that folder, this is what I want you to put from the host into that folder. So this is how we can limit things, and we can make sure certain programs like QBitTorrent, right? QBitTorrent can only see data /torrents, right? It doesn't see, you know, /data. It doesn't see anything more than that. It only sees data torrents. In this case, with Plex, I put data /media because I only want it to really see what's in media. Same thing with QBitTorrent. If we were to go into its data folder, it would only show torrents. It wouldn't show all these other things, right? So again, in data, QBitTorrent doesn't see assets, it doesn't see media, it only sees torrents. And so that's what these container consistent paths and things, and again, I covered it in Docker as well, but it doesn't hurt for me to quickly re-emphasize what we're doing when we do these volume mappings. Remember, a container disappears, poof. And so volume mappings is the only way to ensure that it's app data and any other sort of consistent path we want it to see is gonna survive anything we do. Unless we outright remove the container, right? We completely remove the container and we rebuild it without these volume mappings. But you get what I'm saying? These will always stay there. They won't get deleted when the container is deleted. Do you guys understand that logic there? So if I were to remove the container, I'm playing with fire there. Anyways, so that's what's happening there. You're probably thinking, hey, I got all my 4K and HD libraries. I got QBitTorrent set up with the categories so I can track all those instances separately. You know, I have this down to a science, but you know, how am I gonna start actually requesting things, right? How will I actually request stuff? Well, that's where something called Overseerr comes in. Overseerr is a front-end GUI that makes everything look really cute and all that stuff. And, you know, we can actually cover it if I go Overseerr. And I actually want to show you what it is. It's essentially this. Just go to the website, go to the documentation, request shows, request partial movies, granular permissions, DVR integration. You can do push notifications through pushover or Discord by setting up like a webhook for that as well and all this cool stuff. So this I'm going to just briefly cover, and because you know it has to do with setting up those two instances. And one of the things that in terms of setting up these instances, and one of the things I want to cover here is, first of all, under Plex, never, ever, ever, ever do plex.direct. Okay. Now, once that's done, you want to enable the various libraries that you added in Plex, right? One of the things that I didn't mention, and perhaps I should mention in terms of movies HD and all this stuff, is if we go under libraries, this is what my Plex library looks like. As you can see, movies HD, movies kids Ultra HD. Now you're probably like, well, is movies Ultra HD? That's correct. It's Ultra HD. But then you're probably thinking, hey, what about the movies that are HD that don't have a 4K copy? How do you see those? Don't you get annoyed by switching over to movies HD? Well, yeah. So if you look at my edit library and where I put the folders, you could see I actually did include the movies HD folder in there. And of course, under advanced, we do Plex agent. And these, I tried following the trash Plex guide. So take a look at that. It covers all of this stuff in terms of what I did here. But again, yes, these are those folders, right, that act as root paths on whether it's Radarr 4K or Radarr HD. I still was able to just combine library types together. So I'll see 4K and HD movies in this movies one. Now you guys might be like, well, what if you have, you know, a 4K copy and an HD copy? Then I will see two of them in there. That's fine. That's, you know, just again, that's not really an issue because that's cool. That's not a big deal for me. But if I didn't want to do that, then yes, I would just put movies Ultra HD here. I would, you know, again, you really don't want to rename these libraries. And guys, this is one of those things that I will say this with a lot of emphasis. When you are first setting up your Plex library, please ensure that you're happy with the names, because if you start changing the names, then you're having to change, you know, my names pretty much match the folder names. Now you don't have to do it that way, but I do it that way for sanity reasons. But if I were to change movies to movies Ultra HD, it's still fine because those are still two separate folders. But again, if you're using Plex Meta Manager, then you're referencing the specific name, then you have to go there and edit that. Again, Plex Meta Manager is a different video. If you don't know what that is, check it out there. Yeah, but again, make sure the names you're happy with and you keep them the same. Under TV shows, you can see, again, I have Ultra HD, TV HD under TV shows. Technically I should not do that because, if there is an Ultra HD show and someone is watching the TV's library, they'll see the Ultra HD one, they'll try to play it. So this is kind of a bad practice. I should have created maybe a TV shows Ultra HD library, or TV shows HD library, which isn't, again, this could be like mine. And then for TV shows HD, I could create one, and I probably will, for TV shows HD. So this does actually remind me to do that. And actually, you know what? Maybe I should just do that right now, because again, TV shows, I put Ultra HD in there, and I don't want to do that. So we will create TV shows, and again, media, TV HD only, advanced. And again, the TV HD follows the trash guides. It has a TV DB for everything. We're going to change that to TV DB. Prefer artwork, prefer local, find extras, only show trailers, allow red band trailers. Though TV shows, there's not really many trailers there. Enable video preview thumbnails, no. Hide collections, show their items, season show. Enable intro detection, sure. Enable credits detection, keep that off. Use local assets, season titles, okay. And again, TV HD only. TV shows HD. So that is actually what I should have done. We will add that now. And this way, I can assign specific HD library to only people who only want to watch the HD stuff. So look at that. I caught a little mistake on my end. So again, TV shows anime, TV shows kids. Now, you're probably wondering, where's your movies anime, right? You guys are probably wondering that, because remember I mentioned earlier I was going to cover it. Where's your movies anime? Well, so I don't have a movies anime. What I did was movies that are anime, I thought about it and I'm like, well, I rather just put that in my main movies folder. That's just kind of how I thought about doing it. Could I create a movie shows anime? Sure, I could do that too. And I probably, I might. I just don't watch that much anime to justify keeping it as an entirely separate library for movies. And how many anime movies are there really? So I figured, okay, anime movies for movies anime can just go under movies. And for kids anime that are kids specific can go under movies kids for anime. So if it's an anime for children, it can go under kids. And if it's an anime for adults, it'll go under movies. I didn't feel like it was worth really making kids anime, movies, kids anime, right? We already have movies, kids, Ultra HD, movies HD. So trying to limit the number of libraries as well that I have to overwork. Don't want to do that either. So that's one of those things. But once you have your entire libraries here, you're going to go into Overseerr. You're going to start checking it out. So in fact, let me go ahead and, movies HD. I mean, again, do remember my movies in Plex, my movies folder is Ultra HD and movies HD. So, I could technically do enable movies. I should have done that actually. See, I'm catching some errors while I'm teaching you guys. It was a win-win. But this movies includes movies HD, so I can do that. Again, this is just so that Overseerr can scan your titles and make sure that your people don't request movies that are already existing in those titles. So movies, that covers, remember, my movies library has movies HD in it. So I'll uncheck movies. That's probably why I did this. But that was wrong accidentally. It was actually supposed to be like this the whole time. Now movies kids HD, movies kids. Okay, let's sync the libraries real quick so that the other one can show up that I made. What did I make? Where is it? TV shows HD. Don't need to do that since I have TV shows that has Ultra HD and HD shows currently. And now TV shows HD. The reason I didn't do HD again was because I didn't really have any Ultra HD shows right yet. As of recording this, I didn't transfer them over. But really that should cover this one. This should cover that one, right? Because this has TV shows and TV shows Ultra HD and TV shows HD in there. TV shows anime, TV shows kids. Let's start the scan on the library. So it's going to scan that, and let's hit save changes. Attempting to collect it to Plex. Can I take it to successfully? Okay, now services. This is the fun part. Now take a look at this craziness. You know, again, not only is the auto tagging important for anime people, right? Because remember that you will have an anime profile and you'll have an indexer. And again, this is crucial why tagging is important, because then you're able to essentially assign the proper, the profile you can assign regardless of the tag. But the tags, again, don't want to confuse you guys. The tags are for the indexers. But again, if we look at this stuff, it will tag anything with anime. So what I'm telling Overseerr to do is, hey, Overseerr, whatever you have in Radarr HD Anime Kids, make sure that you tag it with anime on the request so that when it adds into Radarr and Radarr contacts the indexers, it knows that, oh, I'm only going to contact that nyaa.si indexer to look this movie up. So again, this is really where the tag does come into play, but it's not for the quality profile. I was about to say something weird, but so this is Overseerr's setup. Again, Overseerr, when you first look at it, it only shows this one box and this one box. And then it says you can connect multiple servers, but only 2 of them can be marked. So in my newbie mind, I thought that meant only two, period. But that's not what that means. It means only 2 can be marked as defaults. So when someone's requesting 4K, it will use Radarr, this server 4K for the 4K requests, and this server for the HD requests, right? So let's go back. Okay, so you can add multiple. So what I did was I added the same Radarr HD, but I called it anime. Because why? Because when you're making requests, it asks you which sort of, let me show you, for example, right now. Let's pretend like we're requesting some anime. I don't know. Cowboy Bebop. Okay. Bebop. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I want to request Cowboy Bebop the show. And I hit request. So notice how the root folder, okay, it is the same under the settings. So here's where you can pick that this request will get added into TV Kids or TV Anime or TV HD. This is why that's really important, is because I can pick, okay, for the anime, put it in my anime directory, not in this other stuff. And, again, that's where the root paths are really important. And it gets this information from Sonarr and Radarr. When you import the library, it gets this information. But it's not just putting it in TV Anime where Radarr is going to go, oh, it's anime. No, Radarr does look at whatever the API for its search engine it requests, Cowboy Bebop, and it comes back animation with Japanese voice language, like the tag. Then it'll mark it anime when it adds it. So this is, again, where do I want to send it? This has no correlation on what Radarr or Sonarr will tag it as. And again, do I want what profile do I want? By default, so this is I set it as HD, right? I mean, you don't want to touch the other stuff, but it still lets you. And again, you can also custom choose the tags. You can say, okay, I want it to have anime on it, right? So, but you see, this is why you could do it manually, but I set up a fourth instance, you know, 2 more instances, not just Sonarr HD and 4K, but I did HD Anime Adult and Anime Kids. So by default, Anime Adult loads up the anime profile. It automatically sets the freaking tag for me, so I don't have to worry about that. And once again, automatically does that for me. And once again, I have made it so by default it chooses TV anime. Okay, because remember, Anime Adult will go to TV Anime, and Anime Kids, because I think kids can watch it, will just go to TV Kids shows. I'm not going to distinguish like normal 60s cartoons from anime cartoons, and I'm not that much of a stickler for the differences there. But that's why I have those 4. You probably don't see people with 4. You'll at most see people with just these first 2 boxes on each. But I did that just because I don't want to click 2 more times because I'm lazy. So I did same instance of Radarr HD, but I defined the quality profile as anime per trash guidelines with the trash custom format. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to trash guide. I don't know why you're watching this right now. Go to trash guide, watch that video, then come back and you'll understand this. And then for the root folder, I chose, okay, well, for movies that are anime adult, just put it in the movies HD folder. Simple as that. Minimum availability announced, and make sure to automatically mark it as anime. Do you have to add these other 2? No, but then you're going to have to constantly manually put anime for those ones. Manually. Now, if you were to add it without that, well, then what happens is it adds your show. And I believe now, I did this for good measure, but if you don't add that tag and you add the show, it will request the show. It will add it into Radarr and whatever. So very annoyingly enough, I did a whole experiment for you guys, and I thought I had it on video, and it wasn't on video, but I requested an Overseerr. I requested the Cowboy Bebop in, you know, without the anime tag in Overseerr, and it actually did auto tag before it went to the indexer and grabbed the torrent, and then I deleted it. So can confirm you actually don't need those anime tags there. If you have auto tag, that's more than plenty. You don't have to do it that, you know, a tag there for, you know, but may as well make Sonarr's life a little easier by tagging your anime with anime tag for it. May as well, right? If you are specifying anime and where to, you know, put the stored requested anime and what profile to use. Remember, at the end of the day, Overseerr is literally like you manually going in here, typing Cowboy Bebop, right? It's like you going into, you know, Radarr manually and doing all of these settings by itself. So Overseerr automatically tells it, okay, you're always going to monitor. But remember, when you make a request, Overseerr does ask you, hey, what's the root path you want? What's the quality profile you want? One thing is, though, for certain users, you can disable the advanced function to choose the path and all that and just set a default. Again, make sure you don't have someone requesting a lot of anime, because then you should give them that permission and explain to them how to properly, you know, download the anime and which folder it goes into and all that stuff. So that's that for Overseerr Sonarr integration. Now, next up, I do want to, and I think finally I want to discuss the final piece of the puzzle that I want to discuss in terms of the media server, the 2 instances, you know, and in terms of now you're probably, Michael, I got the 4K, the HD Sonarr, the 4K movies, aka Radarr, the HD Radarr. I got all that ready. You know, I saw your Plex Meta Manager and image cleanup video. I understand about the consistent paths. I understand Overseerr. I got that, the profiles created just like you showed me, you know, all this stuff. I did all that. Now what? Well, one of the things you'd probably want to do is AutoScan. And again, AutoScan, look at that, /data. I'm giving it that path, right? But you want to grab your Plex login token utilizing, you can look that up. It's called X-Plex token. And what you do is you literally go into the Plex library, you play something, and then you view the info on something, you hit view XML, and then on the browser, it'll have your token. You're always going to want to use that. What is AutoScan? Let's talk about this. AutoScan replaces the default Plex and MB behavior. MB is another player, but Plex behavior for picking up file changes. AutoScan integrates with Sonarr, Radarr, and LiDAR to fetch changes in near real time without relying on the file system. This is the last piece of that puzzle. You got your thing set up. You got Overseerr set up. You got QBitTorrent, Deluge, RootTorrent, whatever you want set up with the categories, sending it to the proper torrent directory folder, right? Movies or TV, or maybe even music if you have that under your torrents folder. You got all that going. But for Plex, what you notice is when you grab stuff on Radarr or Sonarr, it takes a while to show up, right? Or when you put it on Overseerr, it takes like 5-10 minutes, right? Even with Plex has this setting under library that says scan my library automatically and run a partial scan when the changes are detected. Turn all of these off. And again, this is the trash guide that I based it off of, but really you want to turn off all of these scans because you're literally replacing it with AutoScan. Yes, you're replacing it with AutoScan. And really, one thing I do want to put a note on is AutoScan really does replace the Plex pickup behavior for file changes. I had issues with AutoScan delaying certain pickups in terms of the file changes when I was making big dramatic move of the library. So be wary of that. If you're making big changes on the file, on the host path, and you're moving folders around and stuff, keep AutoScan off. Don't have that enabled. Just FYI, keep it off. That way, when you're moving stuff around, AutoScan isn't tracking that, and telling Plex, hey, look there. So what AutoScan's really doing, and let's take a look at AutoScan real quick here, and let's go under app data, AutoScan. So here's the config for AutoScan. Authentication is the webhooks authentication. If you're not sure what webhooks are, it's just like a fancy way for essentially one program to somehow communicate with another program. So there's two ways that Sonarr and Radarr can communicate with AutoScan. One of them is a webhooks. So you basically set up a webhooks. So if we go under Radarr, we go under settings, and then we go under connect. There it is, AutoScan. You can tell it, hey, let AutoScan know when I do all these things on import, on upgrade, on rename, on movie added, on movie file, delete, because these all change the files, right? So, and you point it to here, AutoScan 3030, triggers, and Radarr. So the trigger, and you give it the HTTP method is post, and username and password is whatever you define here. So then, nobody random can somehow see what you're downloading and stuff. It's a nice little measure. Anchors, and you're going to want to make this file. It's basically a blank file that it exists inside of wherever you want AutoScan to search for changes. And if that file is, it's not there, right? If it's not there, basically it's like a way for a file AutoScan to know if the directory is searchable. So if that file is there, it's a good thing. If that file has changed, it assumes that something in the directory itself, it's a different mount directory. It's not the same disk or whatever. So something like this, I might be a little incorrect on that, but the way that I understand it is, again, you're creating. So if we go under this for my thing and we go under data, you can see that under media, I created the anchors file under where I'm searching, right? You can have multiple dot, we put dot anchors because apparently you can have multiple anchors. So I just put local dot anchor. You can have multiple anchors. So I just called it dot anchors. That's kind of what people are doing. So I did that. And then I created this file. Okay. Local dot anchor. And I created this file with, again, it gets created when you do under UnRAID. Okay, when you go under UnRAID and you go under the terminal here, right? And you do make dir, mount user data media anchors, right? And then you can also define it like n anchors and dot anchors, whatever. There's a command, I'll put it in the description, but it allows you to make this anchors file, local.anchor. There we go. Okay, local.anchor. So we define where that's located. Data, media, anchors. Notice again, data /media. So that's why it's really important to have that consistent thing, because it looks under this configuration file is going to look under /data and wherever that's mounted on the host path. So that's why data is just the go-to. Media. So again, with this one, with FileScan, we did give it access to the entire data, which has the torrents, the media, the assets. Doesn't need it. Depends. Which directory do you want it to look in? It can also inform you, it can also search for changes under torrents. Not that I know what that's useful for, but you could technically just do data /media just to kind of limit what it's doing. But then remember to also update it here to /data /media. Don't just leave it data. So just because it's /data, I kept it data. No harm, no foul. And then port 3030 is the webhook part. Now this is the triggers. Triggers is, if you read about AutoScan, what it does is it receives triggers, right? In terms of either a manual trigger. iNotify is a trigger that it's constantly searching. In this case, I did it here, include data /media. It's searching this directory, but it's excluding anything that's, a subtitle file, a PDF file, a book file. You can also put whatever other file that you want to not set it off. Because the minute it detects something that's not a subtitle, a PDF, or an EPUB, it'll essentially set off, there's a trigger and a target. So it'll recognize, oh, there's been a change. So again, that's one of those things. So we want to make sure that it's working when it should. So here I set it as data /media. So it's only really looking in the media folder. And then I defined the local file system path. This is just, again, iNotify is so it's constantly scanning the file system. And then the paths is which path it monitors in terms of iNotify, right? The iNotify block. Sonarr Radarr, you just need one instance of these because, again, you're probably like, why not Sonarr 4K and all that? It doesn't, I'm not distinguishing the priorities. So again, Sonarr, name Sonarr. If I wanted to, I could do it this way. Sonarr 4K, priority, priority, I believe the highest number means it has more priority. So don't do 1, that's lower. So priority 5, meaning it will prioritize reporting of file changes for that it detects from Sonarr 4K. So it's checking this a lot more than that in a way. So I didn't do that. I don't really care. I want everything to be equal, no server to be prioritized. And then you add the targets, which is Plex. So this is what forces Plex to pick up the changes, because Plex then picks it up as, so you give it Plex, you give it the token, and it basically forces Plex to scan, and it gives Plex the information like, hey, found this trigger for this path here under movies kids. And then Plex knows instantly, oh, that's where that is. It doesn't even look. It just knows because AutoScan searched for it and even alerted it. So it's a quick way to just really trigger that. So that's AutoScan. And once more, that's the last real piece on the Sonarr 4K, Radarr 4K, and the last real nugget of fun technical stuff that you have to do in AutoScan. One of the things I want to mention that I added to AutoScan is the webhook port. For some reason, the webhook port was not defined, so I went ahead and added that myself. I'm not quite sure why it wasn't defined, but I know that I added that. And it is important to add that, because without adding that, you can't define the webhook. I do believe, though, however, AutoScan does mention that you need to add that in there manually. So make sure you add that webhook port. There is a separate video I'm going to do in terms of notifier and trash guides and custom formats. That's going to come a bit later. But Prowlarr is one thing I'm not going to cover. It's pretty straightforward what Prowlarr is. You know how we have all these different instances and we're going in and we're putting the indexer every single time? Prowlarr essentially allows you to put the indexers into Prowlarr, and it syncs it across all your instances. So you don't have to manually go into Sonarr 4K and Sonarr constantly manually enter it. I didn't cover Prowlarr here, even though it's pretty relevant to the two instances, because I didn't want to overly complicate it for somebody who just wants to get set up right now, stick to the Starr apps. When you feel comfortable enough, you could then remove those indexers and then set them up through Prowlarr, and Prowlarr will just sync your indexers automatically across all of them. You're basically, it's like a database that these apps get the indexer from. So Prowlarr, imagine every app can copy Prowlarr's indexer. So you only have to really add it once, and then it'll get copied in my case, 4 times over. Unpackerr, essentially what it does is when Radarr and Sonarr grab a TV show, okay, or they grab a movie, and that movie or TV show has been RAR'd by the scene release group, the Radarr and Sonarr don't have the capability to unpack it for you. They literally go waiting to import under activity. You have to unpack it yourself, and that's where Unpackerr comes in. So now let's go over what Unpackerr is. Let's read the description. It's a RAR download extractor for Sonarr Radarr and LiDAR. Okay, this is where God bless the devs, but the language here doesn't make any sense. Mount/downloads on all 3 or 4 containers to the same path on your host. Okay. And I know I did a lot of editing for this one, for Unpackerr specifically. And you guys, I don't recall exactly which one, but I'm pretty sure I edited the downloads location, because this was just /downloads. And again, it's very not good, because it's not keeping that consistent /data nomenclature that we're used to. So under /downloads, and then you're like, okay, downloads to the same path. What path? So this application will pull all of the apps to check for downloads. When a completed download contains a RAR file, this application will extract the file, move the contents back into the downloaded location. So again, it's trying to see from Radarr and Sonarr, okay, did you download anything? Are you waiting? And if it detects waiting for import, it goes into your downloads folder, tries to find the info for whatever episode or movie you grabbed, and it unpacks it. It pulls them. Again, if you put all your containers on the same custom bridge, again, so remember that one router, custom bridge, media server. So make sure to do that. We do want to do that because here, again, when it asks, hey, where's Sonarr? I can just say Sonarr instead of 192.168. Every single time. Enter your API key. One of the things that is interesting for Unpackerr is it only shows one instance of Sonarr and one instance of Radarr, but it's pretty easy to see that. And I did confirm with a dev that you can literally just change the 0 to a 1 and add multiple instances of Radarr. So in this case, I added Radarr HD URL. So if I hit edit, you can see what I did. You can pause the video and copy it over. Same thing for Sonarr 4K. Okay, same thing for the API key. And you have to give the API keys for everything. And these were given by the template. So 8989, 7878. Again, 7878 is my Ultra HD Radarr. This is my Sonarr, right? There's no 4K. Then I have Radarr HD, which is the secondary, and Sonarr 4K, which is my secondary. Though remember, Radarr 4K is my primary for movies. It's a little weird why I did it that way. Maybe I could have, made the Sonarr 4K primary, but it didn't make sense because there's not a lot of Ultra HD shows that I'm watching. So I didn't want to make that the primary. Now pay very close attention. I forgot to mention this with Overseerr and all that, but notice the port on all of these is 8989 or 7878 for Radarr. Even though the ports, when you type it in, the host port is 7879 for the 4K Radarr. Well, actually, for the 4K HD, right? It's 7. Look, if I go, even though I put Radarr 7878, notice that my HD Radarr is actually on port 7879, right? Look at that. That's my HD Radarr, right? See, Blu-ray 1080p 7879. But in the container, remember, these are for don't put 7879 here for HD. Put 7878 because it's talking about the port the container is exposed on, okay? The container, not the host path, the container. Remember, we go over there, you'll see. Let me just pop open a new Docker here and I can show you guys. See how easy I was even for me? I was like, wait a minute, what? That, again, for these, even though the host path, the container is, the host path is 7879 for my HD Radarr, right? And my 4K is 7878. The containers still think they're at 7878 according to the name. So notice how it says Radarr, and then the container port is 7878. Radarr 4K 7878. So that's really what's happening here. Radarr 4K 7878. Radarr HD Radarr 7878. I don't know why, but when I was going here, I was like, wait, what's going on? This is at 7879. Ugh, brain fart. But just want to really point out the importance of the container ports here, because again, it's super, super crucial to refer to those. If they're in one of these templates, refer to it with the container port, not the host port. So what is another example of something that really needs needs these two referenced? I think Unpackerr is currently the only one for me. Let me check. I don't think Prowlarr is one of them. Nope, Prowlarr is not one of them. Yeah, that's the only one. So be mindful of that, you guys. Be mindful of that. Now, anyways, that's everything I can think of in terms of conceptual pitfalls, things to clarify with the consistent and well-defined file paths. I think that was the biggest takeaway of this video. But also creating the structure to making your life easier. Movies HD Kids, movies Ultra HD Kids. How to get these route paths into the relevant Sonarr and Radarr, right? And then furthermore, how do we utilize a front end to download into these route paths, right? With Overseerr. There's a lot to digest. I want to say one thing. I've probably taken months of information and digested it into this video, or perhaps I made that a series of videos. Just recall that, again, you have to do the work. You have to read. You have to do that. But this guide will help. It will help be an introduction for you. It will help clarify kind of the confusing concepts in the wiki that even though, you know, they wrote it, but it was a little confusing. And again, one thing with Unpackerr, again, is notice how you want to point the downloads location to wherever your torrents are. So I pointed it to /data/torrents, and then here we go, mount user data torrents. And again, we want to point it to a path that Sonarr and Radarr can see. So when they look at /data/torrents, they need to see this. Okay. Just like QBitTorrent, when we did /data and then /data/torrents, but /data for Radarr and Sonarr was not /torrents. It was /mount user data. So same concept here. Don't make that mistake. Hit edit, change the container path to match, so that if AutoScan needs to tell something to Sonarr and Radarr, or Radarr and Sonarr telling it, hey, /data is this, AutoScan knows, okay, so /data/torrents is this on Radarr and Sonarr. Because remember, everything should talk to each other, even if they don't. Anyways, guys, I hope these videos were helpful. If there's any questions, leave them in the comment section. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. You don't have to subscribe. It would be great if you do, just so that I know people are, seeing value in these videos. But in either case, I hope you guys found these series of videos incredibly useful. We covered, for overview, we covered Radarr 4K, Radarr HD. We covered explanations of how to set up your media folder, your torrents folder. This was not a coverage of the trash guide or the naming or Plex Meta Manager, Plex Image Cleanup, or what those even are. If you're curious as to what they are, check out their relevant videos on my channel. Thank you so much. Take care. See you guys next time.